I raised investment for this business, like a significant amount for me to build this product and launch this product, and it all ended up going to waste.
Wow.
Mainly because...
But when you realise that, okay, this investment isn't going to work, this money's gone, like how do you go about telling the investors?
Yeah, that was a defining moment. So what I realized was, and I wasn't planning on starting a new business actually, but an opportunity arose where I felt like this is something that I could do. So, and we said, we're gonna do the thing that we didn't do with our first business, which was, I think I love problem solving, especially creatively and innovatively. I love sharing experiences with people. I love overcoming difficult challenges. And I think one of the realms to do that most effectively is in the entrepreneurial realm. So
this episode is all about resilience. Nana takes us through the lessons learned from the failure of his first business and how he's used those to find success with his latest business, Tectonic. Guys, make sure to tune in. This is one not to be missed. And if you like the content that you've been listening to so far, you know what to do, guys. Like, subscribe, share, comment. Now, enjoy the episode. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of What My Best Friend Does, where we talk about what your best friends do, because let's be honest, nobody knows. Today, I'm joined by the founder of Tectonic. Nana, how you doing, bro?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
The pleasure is mine. We like to start with a little icebreaker.
Cool.
What did you want to be growing up?
Yeah, so it's random, bit embarrassing, but I wanted to be one of those guards that stood outside Buckingham Palace for ages with the big black hat, all in the red for way too long. Then I started reading about history and I was like, that's probably not the best one. Yeah. But after a while, when I got a little bit older, I'd say in my teens, I really ended up wanting to be like the CEO of a big company.
Okay.
Like run a big company. Didn't necessarily have to be my own at the time, but growing up, just really wanted to run a huge organization.
So you mentioned the fact there that you wanted to run a big company. Yeah, like take us back. What has your journey been like? Maybe start in your secondary years. Yeah. Have you always had the entrepreneurial mindset? Yeah, take us through.
Yeah, so in secondary school, one of the things that I normally did was put on a lot of parties. So I put on a lot of events.
Okay.
Even at that age, because I kind of knew at that age, you know, you want to go cinema and stuff like that, but sometimes you want to do something different. So I put on events and charge people to come to them. So charge £5 for people to come to the events. People surprisingly paid. Yeah. And I used a lot of that money to kind of buy lunch, buy my bus pass, all that kind of stuff when I was younger. My parents aren't from an entrepreneurial background at all, so I'm not sure kind of where it came from, but I didn't like reflecting. That's kind of where it started. Then I went down the normal university, kind of went down the university route, did business, studied international business, and then was down the route of, right, I'm going to get a job, just work up the ranks to CEO basically one day.
Okay, wow.
Did an internship, so a summer internship with a management consultancy where they basically give you the job for the next year, if you pass like the internship probation kind of thing.
So when you did that summer internship, was that at the summer of your second year or at the summer of your final year?
Yeah, it was the summer just before my final year.
Just before your final year.
Yeah.
Okay,
so you do a good job there. Then they say, come back once you've got your 2-1 or first or whatever is required.
Yeah, 100%.
And then the day of my final exam, I was walking to my final exam. I got a call, and the company said we got to cut off all internship contracts. So I had no job to go to, and I had to kind of get my head in for the exam. But once that was done, I realized I need to change something up, because I felt like I was given all this control to one organization to define my future. Yeah. And actually I felt like I needed to find an alternative route. Yeah. So after that, I just ended up doing odd jobs, working for the NHS, working in golf clubs, like cleaning bars and stuff. Ended in a graduate job, worked my way up quite quickly, working for the executive team. And then that's kind of where I decided to leave. My parents were not happy about that, but saved some money, left to try and start my own thing.
Okay. And I've asked this to like a few founders who have been on the podcast previously. When you make that decision to leave like an executive job, right, which I'm sure paid like a good salary, what were your key considerations before making that move?
Yes, good question. So mainly regret. That was the main thing. It was, on one hand, it was, am I really going to regret this? On the other hand, it was, am I really going to regret not doing this? So being driven by, life is short and there are opportunities and things that I want to do. So first of all, it was that, would I regret at this time not trying my own thing? And the second thing was really, do I have the support network around me? So if things don't go to plan, I'd still be in a position to get another job and try again. So, I mean, I should have considered more how much money I needed to save, because I ran out of money very quickly. But that was the main consideration. Just, is this in my heart something that I want to try, and focusing on that. And having that conversation with people sometimes can be quite hard.
Before we like go even deeper into that, because I'm gonna go all over the place. Taking it back to the school days. Like, what venue did you use for your parties? That's just like been in my head. When you're charging people £5, was it your house? Like, the school hall? It
was various. So my house sometimes. So when I was younger, like 14, 15, I used to put on like football game tournaments. People put in £5.
Oh, little FIFA team.
Pez at the time.
Bro, I was number 9 in the UK.
Really?
I was a gamer, bro.
Wow. I'm glad you didn't come then. So those kind of tournaments. And then as we got to like 16, 17, I was thinking about this earlier, like in the week, how we used to play rugby, played at a rugby club, and then I managed to convince them to do like an underage event, and even got parents to supervise. And I was wow. I have no idea how, and so I charged for that. That was the biggest one. I had about 180 people turn up, all paying £5. And that kind of money to someone at 17 who's not from like a rich background, is
quick maths, £800.
My
maths is correct. That's a lot. That's a lot for someone at that age.
I still owe my brother money, because he was the bouncer at the party, and I still owe him money for that. So
that is crazy. So you were able to put on these events, and what did that give you? Like I suppose like a taste for how easy it was to kind of make money, or did it give you like a full sense of how easy it was to make money?
I think it definitely gave me a full sense, because at the time I didn't realize it, but I wasn't doing them for money as such. It was more about solving a problem or creating an experience. But I definitely say that I might have taken it too, not too easy, but felt that, if I could do this in this environment, then if I switched to another environment, it would be simple as well. But I learned the hard way that it definitely wasn't.
Okay. And just before we get on to you starting your business, so you mentioned university, you got your degree in business. Did you find university beneficial?
From an education perspective, not so much, to be honest. I felt that I did a year in Denmark where I studied at the business school there, and that was more beneficial from an education standpoint, because a lot of what they do is open book exams. So it's all about applying knowledge, not remembering exactly everything. It's just like, you've got information here, how do you apply it to a situation? I felt that was really beneficial. But education wise, not so much. But meeting people from different cultures and understanding different perspectives, like when I was again in Denmark, I lived with two people from Catalan, from Barcelona, and understanding how they believe in independence as a Catalonian state versus the rest of Spain. I had no idea. It was eye-opening to me. So, before university, I never met a Sikh person before. So understanding religion, like Sikh religion, and how they view things and things like that, it really opened my mind up to lots of different cultures. That was the most beneficial thing.
And you mentioned like being in Denmark for a year. To any young people who are potentially listening to this, might be thinking about going to university, doing a year abroad. Like, what are the key considerations? Because I know for me, I'm not organised enough to plan a year abroad. Is it something that was part of the curriculum, so you knew that you were going to be away, or is it something that you decide on whilst you're at university?
Yeah, so for this particular program, it was, you knew from the beginning that in your third year you were going to have to go somewhere, but you had a myriad of choices of places to go. I don't know if this is the advice that I would give, but the way I did it was I wanted to go somewhere that I knew very little about. And one of the reasons for that was because I wanted to be out of my comfort zone. I wanted to feel like I could go somewhere, be independent, learn the culture, embrace it and be successful in that culture, because I felt that the skills and the resilience it would give me would kind of help me further in life. So that's why I chose Denmark. I knew nothing about Denmark as a place.
Was that year taught in Danish or English?
Partly in Danish, but I would safely say my grades were not great in those ones. But most of them, were in English, and they had like speaking exams. So you'd go in and defend a position rather than do writing. So it was really creative how they kind of assessed your abilities there.
Okay, sick. All right, so had to kind of like unpick that a little bit more. But you mentioned the fact that you had the grad scheme before your final exam. You're given the bad news, and this kind of, it leaves a bit of a sour taste in your mouth, right? A bit of a loss of trust, right?
Yeah.
And it leads you to want to take charge of your own destiny. So can you talk to us about the origins of the first business you started?
Yeah, sure. So I love music. I still do. Massive fan. And one of the things I felt just growing up as I was learning more about music was that DJs were really underappreciated. Like really technical, talented DJs were underappreciated. And I'd go on these nights out and I'd be like, why is the DJ so terrible when there's all these amazing DJs that are struggling to find bookings? So originally it started as a booking marketplace where I found DJs. I went to DJs, got them on the marketplace and found venues to book them. That was the beginning, and then it kind of morphed from there. But originally it was solving a problem for myself. I wanted to go out and hear better DJs. But outside, as I was going on that journey, I started to learn some of the problems that you can come across when you have a business idea and you don't really do certain types of research or really understand certain elements of the company.
So much to unpack from that little bit you've just said there. The first thing is, obviously you've saved up a bit of money. You mentioned the fact that you ran out of money quickly. When you decide, okay, I'm going to solve this problem, what are like the steps you take? Like, is it a website first? Like, how do you go about securing clients? Like, do the DJs even want to use you? Do the venues even want to use you? And also, like, what you view as a good and bad DJ, it's like a perception play as well, true. Right? So talk me through your thought process and how you went about trying to solve this problem.
Yeah, sure. So the way I went about it for this first business was probably not the way I should have gone about it, but I'll tell you what the process was. So originally it was, all right, I know that I need supply of DJs. So that's the first thing I'm going to focus on. I'm going to focus on making sure I have access to talent, because the business falls apart if I don't have access to talent to showcase to venues. So I did that. I ended up going out, speaking to DJs, getting a lot of content from the DJs so they could showcase, giving them a profile on a website. So ended up starting the technical journey earlier than I probably should have, like building the platform. But then when I took the DJ's content, the pages to the venues, there was a bit of apathy towards it. It was like, well, I've got a DJ now. Why should I book this person? They're more expensive. So for example, not realizing that price sensitivity is more important for some of the venues than the quality. So in my head, I went in with a massive assumption that surely all venues want amazing DJs, because if you're an amazing DJ and you're dancing and having a good time, they're going to stay, they're going to spend more money on the bar, etc. But in reality, when you actually speak and get insights from those customers and learn those venues, you find out that's not necessarily the case. Hence, I ended up building that business the wrong way around. I started with a solution in mind to what I believed the answer was for the problem, rather than thinking about what's the best way to address the problem for the customers in their own circumstances.
So with everything you've just said there, like from that first business, knowing what you know now, what are like the key learnings would be the first question.
So I think the key learnings are, first of all, go in with assumptions, but recognize they are assumptions and not truths. So if I was to go through it again, I would be thinking, all right, I assume venues care about the quality of the music in their venue. But then I can actually go and have conversations with them to understand more about how they run processes, how they actually do things, how do they choose their DJs, why do they have that particular DJ, how did they find them, why do they stick with them, asking them particular questions, more to get insights to help me figure out, all right, then now I understand that, what is the solution that makes sense in that respect, and then how do I most cheaply and quickly test whether that solution could be accurate for them or viable for them. So not spending months and months developing products and services that actually might not be useful. And, you know, I raised investment for this business, like a significant amount for me to build this product and launch this product. And it all ended up going to waste.
Wow.
Mainly because I didn't understand going in with, I have assumptions about this. I'm not actually sure if these things are true. So let me find out if they're true first before spending money and time on a product.
I love that. And you've kind of answered like what my follow-up question was going to be. You've mentioned the fact there that you raised money.
Yeah.
I know speaking to you that raising money isn't always easy. Can you talk to us about how a potential founder would go about raising investment?
Yeah, sure. So there's different types of investment. I raised in this business angel investment. So going to either high net worth individuals or individuals that had cash that they were willing to invest in a startup. One thing I would say is the mindset thing is really important because the odds of raising money are quite low, but you have to believe that you can do it. Number one.
A bit delusional.
You got to be a little bit delusional,
yeah. I've heard
a little bit
before
delusional,
podcast,
yeah. You have to really believe that.
Yeah.
Secondly, it is a numbers game from my experience. So I think I spoke to 80 to 90 investors to get, I think, 12 investors in the end. So I got a lot of no's, a lot of people saying no. But when I recognized that's part of the game, that's just how the game works. It's highly unlikely you speak to 12, you get 12 yeses. And the process can take time as well. But the hardest thing, I think, is trying to treat the process as though you are in a sales process, in effect. And what I mean by that is I have a part of my business that I'm willing to give away, which I believe is valuable. And you have cash, advice, network that you also believe is valuable. So is there a meeting of needs here?
Yeah.
Making it more as though when we go into the investment process, it's often I am down here and the investor is up here because they have the money. But actually, if you can start to bring it to a level of we're actually equals, we just have different offerings, different pieces of value. I noticed the conversations and getting investment was a lot easier when I was also questioning them on why should I pick you to invest in my business. And that always ended up being an interesting dynamic that they were never used to, which actually made it more likely they invested.
And it's so funny that you say that. So I listened to Dan Priestley on the Diary of a CEO a few months ago.
Nice.
And he spoke about with or without you energy. And it's like, I'm going to raise this money with or without you. To your point, why should it be you? And he definitely says that is a great way to get more buy-in from people who might not necessarily have been interested. So it's great to hear that technique and see it in use. You mentioned the fact you spoke to 80, 90 people. How did you go about sourcing like the relevant people? Was it kind of just spray and pray, or was it they're people in music? Like you mentioned like high net worth individuals. How did you go about finding these people?
So interestingly, for that business, most of the investors were not in music. So it was more of a business thing. But actually, the first investor I had, which gave me the first £10,000, which was just at the time just crazy to me, was it was the psychologist of the exec team from where I used to work. So they knew that I was leaving the company, and they knew I was in a decent position. So they were intrigued as into why I was leaving. Then it was a case of just keeping them up to date, having conversations, showing what the plan was, etc. And then after a while, which I noticed was normally between like 4 to 6 conversations, if I was raising, I would bring it up, but I'd already built some trust by then. So the first investor was through I would say network effectively, but having that direct connection. But then I very quickly leveraged that connection to share with other people that I was raising, and I have commitment and interest from another person. So it was other members of the team or other people that he knew. He also introduced me to other people. I also went through a broker at one time. So there was a broker who had access to high net worth individuals that are willing to invest in a particular type of startup. So if you had music or entertainment as the category, they would go and find investors that either previously had invested, and then they'd set up meetings and they'd take a cut of the investment raised as well. Those were the main ways, but it was mainly network and getting introduced to more and more people for the first business. It was only later on where I started to do like cold outreach and things like that.
Were you the sole founder?
At the time, yes, but I ended up bringing actually my brother on board.
The bouncer?
The bouncer, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the value, the added value.
That was that was supposed to be the repayment.
Supposed to be, yeah. You're still waiting.
That's a spoiler. No, but on that, so how long did you end up giving this a go for?
Yeah, so it ended up being 5 years.
Wow.
It wasn't 5 years full time because, as I mentioned, I ran out of money. So what I ended up doing was raising investment and things like that, but also at some points I'd given away too much equity in the business for the stage that I was at. So I would go and do consulting. I would go and consult somewhere, do a 3-6 month contract, bring in cash, and then pay other people to kind of push it along, and then run the business during the day, in the nights, on the weekends as well.
Wow.
So that's kind of so that's what the 5 years was. But I would say the last 2 years were definitely not making the brave decision quickly enough, like being too attached to the baby about this was something that I believed in, etc. But the evidence wasn't showing that something was real here. So it took 5 years in the end, but it should have been shorter.
So you mentioned the fact, you just used the phrase there, making the taking the brave decision quicker.
Yeah.
Like, what was the point where you were just like, I'm sorry, the life support has to go off? Was there like a single moment, or did it happen like little things over a period of time?
Yeah, I think it was little things leading up to a specific moment. So we were changing strategy a lot, and things weren't working in the way that we wanted it to. We'd get like a peak of interest, and then things would plateau. And then there was one instance where we had a meeting with the investors, and our lead investor was basically saying, maybe you should consider this product isn't a business to consumer product, which predominantly as the product evolved, it ended up being a piece of software that independent musicians would use to find super fans. So the product evolved over time.
Sounds a bit like Patreon.
Yeah, and I think it was an early version of that, but very much focused on music and using social media data to figure out, all right, I might have a fan base in Newcastle, but I'm focusing on London, but actually you should focus your marketing energy on Newcastle because you can get fans there. So the question was, the board were like, maybe you should be focusing on music labels. This is the thing that they have budgets for. Independent musicians don't really want to spend money on this kind of thing, etc. So I was like, cool, fair enough. We ended up working with a music label, a fairly big one, and it was just not fun. Okay. It was really like not what I wanted the business to be. And it was at that moment that I realized, even though we even tried to get more music labels on board and it was a struggle, it was at that point where I was like, okay. And I started to read a lot of content around knowing when to quit. And it doesn't mean that it's a failure if you quit. And I think that's what kept me from making that decision earlier. So yeah, all those kind of small data points not really getting traction enough led me to think that, okay, I need to figure out what type of business I really want to build, if there's value here. If not, I'll have other ideas. It'll be all right.
Okay. I have a few more questions on this, but
sure.
So far, because we've had founders on the podcast before, and I don't know if we've got into like this level of detail, and also being like frankly honest, a company that has failed. I think like this is like super interesting for people who are potentially looking to found businesses and really get the understanding. My next question to you is, you've raised from 12 different investors. You know, you've mentioned the fact that you've run out of money. where does the money go?
As in once the business is done?
No, as in like where is the money going, right? Because you always hear about people, we raise money. Okay, you raise the money, and then what? Is it developers? Is it your salary? What is it that the money's actually being used for?
Yeah, so normally when you raise investment, you break down what you're going to spend the money on, so investors know that or feel that it's going to help you to execute your plan. So normally it's things like product. It was a software product for us, so what the spend was on the software product itself, developers to build it, tools like software tools to help build it as well. Salaries, yes, but the way it works with salaries is you don't want to ideally have it as a specific line item where you're like, I'm going to spend £100,000 on paying people's lifestyle, even though London's expensive and you might need across 3 or 4 people that kind of cash. Maybe. Yeah, this was a while ago though. Now it'd be silly.
He's showing his age here because what?
But now I think that the way that we do it is we say, okay, we're going to spend it on marketing, and part of the marketing budget will be the salaried person or people who are doing marketing, and part of the developers will be in the product budget. That's kind of how we do it. But yeah, it's normally on software. If you're building a technical product, if it's hardware, you're building a hardware product. Could be legal as well, because a lot of the time you need to have terms and conditions that people will sign that protect you legally. Marketing, sales, if you need salespeople, things like that is normally what it goes on.
So just to conclude there, because I think that was like such a key piece of information you've given there. To anybody who's looking to raise money, do not have an itemized line that says salaries. You've got to put it in as marketing or product or R&D, because investors don't like to see the word salary. Yeah,
that's been my experience for sure. My experience has been when I've done that before, it always attracts the eye more than the other things. But because it's still a legitimate expense, that's just the people are going into that expense. So for me, it was a way of focusing the conversation of what this money will allow me to do. And by spending this amount of money on marketing, it will get us to this point, for example. So that worked for me at least,
Okay, so that concludes the first business, right? So we've tried, we're 5 years down the line. We've pulled the cord on that business. Do you go straight into raising money again, or do you go back into normal work? What's kind of the next step?
So I go back into normal work, but more consultancy based again. So they're 3 month, 6 month contracts. And what I realized was, and I wasn't planning on starting a new business actually, but an opportunity arose where I felt like this is something that I could do. So I was actually traveling in Morocco in Casablanca to see a good friend of mine who I met in Denmark. Ended up at the airport and they took my passport and just detained me. For whatever reason. Still to this day, don't know.
Wow.
But they detained me in a room. I didn't know what they were doing with my passport, anything like that. But I was there for quite a long time, definitely multiple hours. And in that same room was another guy from London who was traveling, and we ended up talking. He was asking, so what do you do? I was like, well, I was an entrepreneur, kind of building this software business, etc. And he was saying, I know a guy who really needs help and needs people who have had experience building products. Let's exchange details. So we exchanged details, and even to the point we had such a good connection over that time. He's the only reason maybe I'm out of this airport today. Because he called a friend of his who then called someone else who then called the commissioner of the airport and said, let these 2 people go. Within 10 minutes, we were out the door.
Wow.
And my friend who was waiting very patiently picked me up. And then time went on, and the guy who I met in the airport, who I actually never thought I'd hear from again, he said, oh, the person that I told you about, he's coming to London. Can you meet him? Met that person, and eventually he was our first main customer in building what was a digital agency at the time. So building a business where we helped other entrepreneurs build the first version of their products. And I used the story of I know how to build products, but I also know where it goes wrong. So I'm not just someone who's going to build your product for the sake of it. I'm going to build it knowing that you want this to be commercially viable, and you want it to work. And I'm going to lend my experience to that as well.
Okay, so has the business always been called Tectonic?
No, it hasn't. Yeah. So the first business was called Metier Digital.
Okay.
Can't remember why, but it was called Metier Digital. And one of the ways in which we try to differentiate our business, because in London, there are a lot of digital agencies. There are a lot of companies that will help you build your products. But yeah, what we figured out was, how are we going to differentiate from all the others? How are we going to be different? And we said, we're going to do the thing that we didn't do with our first business, which was research the customers first.
Okay.
So any company that worked with us in Metier Digital at the time, you had to allow us to speak to your potential customers and build what made sense, not build just the thing that you wanted. If you want to build just what you want, go somewhere else. We're not the company for you.
Okay. So the first business, you were building out products for businesses.
Correct. Yeah. Digital products, mainly for early stage entrepreneurs and mainly early stage entrepreneurs.
And how has the business evolved through the years?
Yeah. So we, as I mentioned, we're doing customer research and digital products. After a couple of years, when I was looking at the numbers, we were making more money on the customer research and the digital products, because digital products can be quite hard to scope when you're not sure exactly what direction it's going to go, especially with the customer type that we had. So we ended up dropping the digital product piece and only did customer research.
Okay.
That's kind of how it evolved. And that's when we rebranded to Tectonic, who we are today, doing customer research for different companies. Over time, we've just added more and more services to that, and our customer base has changed dramatically. So we don't work with entrepreneurs as much anymore, as much as we do with established businesses and social enterprises as well.
Okay. So how did the experiences from business number one impact the way you've built business number two?
Yeah, massively. I always remember a mentor of mine said, when you go through that type of situation or failure of your business, you don't even need to have the notes. Like, your body will remember it, because it's such an emotional experience. So I immediately at the time was like, okay, have I got any evidence there is a need for this type of work, this type of business? Can I look online? Can I look at reports? Can I look at things that will give me confidence that I'm not just making this up as I go along, that there's actually some value here?
Yeah.
And then secondly, can I have the team, or can I get access to the people that will allow me to fill in the skills gaps that I don't have, basically? And fortunately for Tectonic, we did raise investment for this business as well. But prior to that, we used revenue from our early customers to fund ourselves. So the difference there when you're raising money is that you're kind of raising money promising something might happen, but when the only way you survive is to sell, the thing that you provide has to be valuable to someone. And therefore you go through these really, when you're resource stricken, the decisions that you make, I find, are so much more effective, because it has to work. And you have to make really cutthroat decisions, because you're like, well, we tried this for 3 weeks, no evidence, new tact, let's go try something again.
Okay, I love that. And you mentioned the fact that you raised again, but it seems like under different circumstances, right? Because there's more revenue being generated.
Correct.
What are the circumstances the second time round where you think, okay, we want to try and raise money again?
Yeah. So the circumstances the second time round were, we went to one angel investment group. So rather than going to individual angel investors, there are these things called angel investment consortiums or groups, where multiple angel investors put their money together, and then certain people are nominated to look for deals and bring them in. I had established a relationship with someone who already had a good feeling about my approach to business and how I do things. So even though we weren't raising money at the time, we'd already had multiple conversations about what we're doing. So the circumstances were, it was having a few conversations with the angel representatives, and then doing one big pitch to the rest of the angels. And going back to that, what you said about the Dan Priestley thing, it was, they asked me, why should we why should we give you the cash? And I said, you don't have to, it's going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
And you saw the faces in the room change, and it's doing it in a way where it's confident but not arrogant, and having that balance is really, really important. And I think that those were the circumstances. And also I was able to assess a little bit more what value were the investors going to add to me, because at the time with the previous business, it was mostly about the money. I felt like investment is money. But when you realize there's different types of money, there's open doors money, there's scientific access money, there's R&D money, there's lots of different types of money that can allow you to build your business further. I think the second time round, that's what really helped.
Did you get that R&D money, that open doors money? It was a lot more than just money the second time
round. It had its challenges itself, and that was partly down to me, because you need to have, if you're going to ask people for something, you need to be clear about what you're asking for. And sometimes we weren't clear about what we were asking for, or we got distracted in other parts of the business. I definitely say that there are things that I could have done better. There are things that investors can do better as well. But I think ultimately it's about being clear with the ask, and also recognizing that investors are busy people. Like you're not the only business on their books. So sometimes I was probably a bit too polite in a way, like too patient with getting certain outcomes. I needed to be a bit more like, you know, let's have this meeting now, let's hash this out now, etc.
With everything that you've just said there, the money that you're given, does it come with a pressure, is the first question, in the sense that now you have investors, you've got people to report to, and all of a sudden you and your business partner, you lose autonomy. Like, how does that dynamic shift when you get investment?
Yeah, it's a good question. So with the first business, I definitely think that I felt a lot of pressure. I felt a lot of pressure because I felt like these were people that were giving me their hard-earned cash to bring something to life that was supposed to make them more money. But over time, I realized that wasn't the right way of thinking. I think it added too much pressure. Now it's more a case of only invest as much as you're willing to lose, because as much as I have conviction in what we're doing, I can't tell the future. I couldn't plan COVID. I didn't know COVID was going to happen. So I always feel like I reduce the pressure on myself and on the team when we do collect investment money, because it is about having intent to do something good, but at the same time, not being able to know the future. So I will never take anyone's money who's trying to like invest their last pennies in it, because I'm like, please invest it in something else. You don't want to invest it in probably this type of entity.
So it's really, as you've said that, going back to the first business, you mentioned the fact that it's not maybe their last coppers. I mean, anyone who's got peas to angel invest, they've obviously got a little bit of money. But when you realise that, okay, this investment isn't going to work, this money's gone, like, how do you go about telling the investors?
Yeah, that was a defining moment. So fortunately, I had some of the investors were more active in discussions with us as we were going through the business. So it was quite clear and quite evident. And very fortunately, I had very like emotionally intelligent investors in that first business as well, because they recognize that, you know, some things work out, some things don't. I think it was more pressure I was putting myself that delayed having that conversation. But I basically called a board meeting and basically said, unfortunately, we don't think that either we are the right people or the market is ready for this type of innovation. Want to thank you for all the time and support you've given us. Because of the nature of the business, the investment, I guess, there was a tax relief element to it. So any money that you put in, the investors got a 50% tax rebate or tax relief, but also there's something called loss relief. So if the business doesn't work out, they get even more money back. And I guess it's a incentive for people to invest in higher risk investment opportunities. So that made me feel a bit better, but at the same time, it was still difficult. But I think one of the reasons it went well, and I still have relationships with most of the investors, I think one still doesn't like me, with most of the investors, because we did it in a graceful way. And it was very, very clear that we tried. We didn't give up at the first hurdle. So it's calling that meeting, having individual conversations with investors, seeing if they want to ask anything about the journey, etc., making sure all the paperwork is easy and clear for them, and taking it from there.
You mentioned the fact that one investor wasn't happy.
Yeah.
How do you handle that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember now. I think it wasn't like we had like a full blown argument or anything like that. You could sense a level of disappointment.
Yeah.
But I would say that, time heals all wounds for sure. But at the same time, I think I needed to do some maturing and recognize that I don't need to feel bad about trying something with clear terms that didn't work out.
Yeah.
If I really gave it my all, and I literally ask if anyone who may have been involved in that business at the time, blood, sweat, tears, sacrifices, all for that to work, and it didn't. So my attitude now is, and this isn't the case with this investor, but if I was in a situation where an investor really was unhappy with the performance and we shut the business down, I'd take it more with a pinch of salt and recognize that, knowing my ethics and my values, I'm going to put everything into it. So if you're unhappy, I'm upset for you, but I'm not going to let it affect how I go about my day and my plans as well.
Okay, sick. Going back to Tectonic, like you mentioned the fact that when you're raising money, you need to have clarity. Like, how do you go about getting that clarity? Do you have any advice? Because you mentioned the fact that you felt like you could have been better. Upon reflection, how would you go about getting clarity on what you're asking for?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely doing some more reflection myself. Like, it's really difficult when you're working in the business to work on the business. So practically carving out time to say, this is my working on the business period. These are the people that need to be involved in this. There's a clear agenda and there needs to be a clear outcome at the end of the meeting. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one example of a practical thing that I would do. Secondly, I would identify who within the angel group is the most appropriate, or the person who's the most appropriate to help me get what I need from the investors' outside money. So it might be network or introducing us to other customers, that kind of thing. So making sure I'm asking the right person, because there are some people who are busier than others. There are some people that have better networks. Being able to identify and ask your investment director, like, who's the best person to speak to about this, and then treating it like an action. Just like I have actions internally in the business, like product needs to be deployed by this date, we need to test by this date. Having a similar situation with investors, saying, right, so this is the shared action. We're going to go and do this. We need you to go and do this. Because as far as I'm concerned, at least, I'm not sure if this is how it operates in the market, but there are places to go for money, but we're really bringing you on to help us beyond the money kind of go forwards. So being clear about, I have responsibilities, you have responsibilities. Let's come together because we both want this business to be successful.
And like, to any potential founders who are listening to this and, they're looking at picking like the right investor, the right investment group. My first question is, how do you know that they're right for you?
Right, yeah, good question. So, I mean, saying all this, I don't know if I'd raise money again, just like as a general point.
We was going to get onto that.
But if I was going to go down that route again, I think the first thing would be, see the money as table stakes. Like, if you're going to get money, you're going to get a certain amount of money from whoever you bring in. So the actual thing after that is, do our values align as people? Because if, for example, someone believes that I want to grow this business to Facebook levels or, Airbnb, whatever, I'm not interested in that, in building that type of business. I will openly say, I do not want $100 billion business.
I do. If there's one knocking around, mate, give it to me. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. But it's true. Like, that wasn't always the case. That was something that I did want. But knowing myself a bit more, I don't want that kind of business. And making sure you're aligned values-wise in terms of where you want the business to go, but also on a personal level, like, do you get on? Can you communicate? Do you think they're a good person? Like, things like that are some of the things that I would definitely assess. But also, what's their vision or what's their view of the business? Do they agree with everything I say? I actually don't want someone who agrees with everything I say. I would like someone or people who have a different perspective that I can utilize. But also, one of the main things for me is, are they happy with the way that I want the interaction to be? So there are some investors who are very hands-on. They want to meet, they'll call you at X time, doesn't matter. They want to know what's going on. They need this piece of information here and there. I don't want to have that kind of interaction. For me, we have scheduled times. We talk. I'll share with you. I'll be very open and transparent with you. Same on your side. And let's try and build a relationship. But I always think it's also great if you're building relationship with investors before you need the money. Yeah. That's the key thing, because then you're really starting to understand who they are before there's an opportunity on the table.
And in terms of that, communication with investors, there's quarterly reporting, biannual reporting, annual reporting. To you, as somebody who, like you said, likes to be structured with their time and not just be called here, there and everywhere, what would you say from your experience is the right cadence with giving those kind of communications back to investors? Yeah,
it's a good question. So the way that we did it is different investors I'd call them silent investors. They're very happy with, let me know either when something's going wrong or something's going really right. That's about it. With others, they wanted more cadence. I would say once a month, in terms of some kind of written report. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. It can be a one-pager. And then sometimes you need to we had, I think, quarterly board meetings. So where it needs to be a bit more fleshed out. But ultimately, the way that I try and do it is make myself reasonably accessible to any nuanced questions that aren't in the report, but nothing that is going to ultimately distract me from the primary purpose, which is to execute on the business plan.
You said something a while back.
Okay.
If it was down to you, you would never raise money again. Bookmark that, by the way. To any investors listening, I'm joking. That's my question. Why is it you wouldn't look to raise money again?
Yeah, so the reason I say that is because a lot of technology and a lot of things have advanced the reason I say that is because a 3 to 5 person business making 1, 5, 10 million a year isn't a crazy idea anymore. With the tools that are out there in the market, some of them are very cheap to kind of validate your idea, your concept in the first place. You've got amazing business tools like LinkedIn, all the AI, OpenAI, and all these tools. It's much easier to grow your business without a large injection of capital
and needing to give away a big percentage.
Exactly. Because my view is as well, we've worked really, really hard for this. So in terms of the business a business that we might want to grow. And if we want to sell it, we want to get
a good return.
And if investors are adding value beyond money, I would definitely consider that and take that into account. But it's not so much having negative interactions with investors the reason I wouldn't do it. It's more that more than ever, you might not need to. You might be able to fund this business through customers, which is in my opinion, is the best way to fund a business.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And yeah, talking about that long-term vision for you and your current business, what is the exit plan there?
Yeah. So for Tectonic, what we do is, as I kind of mentioned, we do customer research. So we help organizations understand their customers through surveys, doing interviews with their target customers, providing reports and things like that. It's a very consultancy-led approach. We are thinking about digitizing that journey. So everything that we would do manually, we basically created an opportunity for tools to do that effectively for you. So we want to digitize the business. When you digitize a business and get customers on subscription basis, on licenses, the value of the company goes up significantly in comparison to an agency model. And then the goal is to sell that business, take money out of the business, maybe chill for a bit, I think is well deserved with the team. And then I actually want to buy a business. The next thing I want to do is buy a business and have that challenge, because I've learned how to originate an idea, solve a problem, find solution, create a solution for it and bring it to market get paying customers. But it's a whole different thing to take something that's already established, needs untangling, and then flip that into a business and sell that business. That's kind of what I'm looking to go into next.
I love that. The first business, just going back to it, do you have any PTSD from it? And what I mean by that is, like, do you feel an extra pressure for Tectonic to succeed because of what happened with your first business?
I don't. No, I don't. What I do feel is that I'm significantly more likely to succeed because of that failure. I actually have more confidence than ever that the journey that we're on is going to end up exactly where we want to be. And sometimes it's weird that the stars align. Just yesterday, had a meeting with our data privacy lawyer. I met that data privacy lawyer when I left my previous business because I had to go in contract, and that's where I met her. So if it wasn't for that failure, I may not have met this wonderful woman that's helping us with all our data privacy terms and things like that for the new business. And as a result, I just feel like this was how it was supposed to be. I had to go through this experience to give myself the opportunity for the next thing to grow and be as successful as I want it to be.
I love that. Listening to what you just said there about the data privacy lawyer, going back to the first ever bit of investment you got, it was from somebody who you previously worked with. It sounds like networking has played a key part in your journey. What is your approach to networking? And to anybody who's listening to this thinking, man, I need to level up with my networking, what would your advice be to them?
Yeah, so I actually don't like the term networking because it feels sometimes a bit forced, but definitely you're right. Having relationships with people,
meaningful relationships,
massively is so important. I think I approach it more naturally because in one way more naturally because I'm naturally a curious person. I do think that if you want to learn what drives people, why they make decisions, why they're in a certain space, it's just similar to what we're doing here. Like, it's a natural curiosity that breeds relationships and interest. But also it's recognizing yourself and your kind of shortfall. So I know I am not a data privacy lawyer. But I know I might need that skill set. So when you're more intentional about who you might need, not for the sake of networking, for the sake of who can help me achieve my goals when I don't have that skill set, and how can I utilize the people around me and share, not just take one way, share how I might be able to help them as well. That's what's been the key for me. It's always been a mutual exchange of energy and value, never taking once, and just trying to be a decent person along the journey just really helps, I think, as well.
100%. And I really agree with what you said there, because like even me, like in my day-to-day work, and as I've been doing this podcast now for like pretty much a year, you find that like you don't know who you're going to need, but you're just having lots of conversations to be like, like it'd be great to like get your advice on this, and in return I can give you advice on this. I've like been added to a group where I've been giving people advice on like how they can grow, and I've been getting advice in return. And I think like you said, if you're just curious and you're quite natural about it, these things have a way of working themselves out. Definitely. Being a founder, it must be like insanely difficult. What would you say is the most stressful aspect of being a founder?
There's a lot of things. I would say that one of the most stressful things in the early stage is just things like payroll. Just like, I've convinced these people to cut their salary in half that they would probably get in the market to become part of a journey to build something more, and you're struggling. You don't know like if you're going to be able to make payroll sometimes, and that is very, very stressful. That can be very, very stressful. But I would say outside that, I think it's just generally handling the emotional roller coaster that it is. Like, some of the best times in my life have been being a founder, and some of the worst times have been being a founder as well. So I think having a support network around you, but also really, and I need to be better at this, like embracing the small wins massively helps. But yeah, if it's not the payroll thing, I should say it's managing the ups and downs.
Okay, I love that, and it's really honest. And yeah, on the flip side of that, what would you say is the most rewarding aspect of being a founder?
Yeah, most rewarding, definitely working with people that you like and love as going through the journey, because I think we've all experienced this. We've worked in places, and sometimes, you know, your team is great and sometimes it's not great, and there's sometimes the feeling that you go into a workplace and you're not able to be yourself or who you are, and there's just none of that when you're working as a founder and you're working with a close-knit group. Like, we all accept each other for who we are, we accept each other for our skill sets, we accept each other for wanting to grow and learn, and when you just have shared experiences, it just massively creates connection, especially in those down periods where you need to solve a problem urgently. That for me is the best thing, and getting to a point where you actually realize, oh, I can actually do this. Like, it's hard, but actually I'm now resilient enough and creative enough to solve the problems that come ahead.
I love what you just said there. You've spoken about being creative and resilient. As a founder, do you think you could ever go back to working a normal job?
Not long term. If I had to, for any particular reason, then I definitely would. But it will always be with a view of how quickly can I
jump back, get back into the ring.
100%. Because now it's just part of my DNA. I think I love problem solving, especially creatively and innovatively. I love sharing experiences with people. I love overcoming difficult challenges, and I think one of the realms to do that most effectively is in the entrepreneurial realm. So I definitely wouldn't long term. I might be wrong, but it doesn't seem like that at the moment.
Okay. Just going back to what you just said there about like creative problem solving, do you have like a framework to solve problems? I'm just thinking, like, for the listener who they might be stuck, is there like a typical approach you take to try and overcome some of the most difficult things as a founder?
Yeah, so first of all, I think about, again, don't think about solution, think about problem. So do I have I seen a potential problem in the market that I'd be interested in solving? Then I think about the assumptions. So what assumptions do I have in the real world that I believe, if these things are true, there's actually a solution that could be created? I document those assumptions, and then I go and find the target customers before I even have a product. Find the target customers to have a conversation with and ask them smart questions that aren't biased. So don't ask them things like, would you buy this product if it existed? Ask them things like, when was the last time you had this problem? Or do you purchase any particular products or tools to help you solve this problem? I look at that data after 10, 20 conversations and say, right, I think there's something here, or I don't. And then I try and test it quickly. So I'll build a quick website page and start putting it in front of people and seeing if they sign up, if it resonates or not, have more conversations. And if I'm getting good data, if people are going on the website, they're spending time, they're clicking sign up, etc., then I start to think, okay, there might be something here. Then I start the process of creating a solution that aligns, and all those people that signed up in those tests, I have conversations with them, so that as a group, we build this solution together to make sure it fulfills their needs.
Okay, sick. It sounds like with everything you've just said there, you kept very busy. Do you have any productivity hacks?
I'm terrible at productivity, honestly. I say all that. I used to use Trello a lot, and every 3 months I'm shifting how I structure it and all these things. I'm using Notion at the moment as a tool, but I do think tools can help. The thing that I think I need to be better at, which will work for me, is time boxing. Just, I need to do this thing within this time, 1 hour, and if it's not done, you either decide to sacrifice another time box thing, or you move on to the next thing. You don't just try and shift it all in the day or whatever, because that's the thing. Those are things that can lead to burnout, can lead to, I'm very much an 80% person. Like, do it to 80%, good enough. Don't spend much more time on it, because the market will tell you, or feedback will tell you, what the rest of the other 20% needs to be. So for me, it's, identify a tool that could be useful, and test it out. But ultimately, I think time boxing is where a lot of productivity will come from, and also rest. And I'm saying these things like I do them all. I don't, but I need to be much better.
At least you've got some self-awareness.
Yeah, exactly.
But talking about rest, like you just said there, like, do you feel like you've got a good work-life balance as a founder?
I don't know. I think some of that is partly my fault, but I think some of it is also, when you are building something from the ground up, it tends to require more hours and energy in the day. Definitely need to make sure mental health, physical health is priority, because I always say, like, don't have a roof over your head, don't have, your mind and your body in a way that allows you to be productive. It's dangerous, and doesn't actually allow you to do your best work. But when it comes to work-life balance, I wouldn't say I do, but when I'm building something new, which is, our evolution of Tectonic, not expecting it to be, but when we didn't have this, I did have a decent work-life balance. I was sometimes working 4 hours a day, which was weird. Yeah. Which was weird. But obviously that's balances out after the, 12, 14, 16-hour days previously. But I personally don't even want to advocate for that kind of amount of time and energy going into stuff, because I think it can be a dangerous rhetoric. I think it's more about recognizing that this business building or new building of ideas can take time, and it's about the balance of patience and urgency. Like, you can have urgency in your activity, but you need to be patient in the overall journey. And I think with that balance, things will help. It will help things kind of work out in the end, because it naturally stems to work-life balance as well.
I love that. Books. I feel like, you've learned a lot.
Yeah.
My question is, have there been any books that have shaped your thoughts and have been really impactful in your life?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the top ones would be Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I think the author Susan Jeffers. That was a big one. Just recognizing that it's all right to be scared. Just don't let it stop you from doing something. Another, which is more psychological, book called The Chimp Paradox. Mainly a psychological book that I think a lot of gold medal Olympians, the psychologist worked with them to figure out how can you get to that 1% mindset, that delusional belief, and how do you quiet down the noise of you're not good enough, you can't do this, etc. Another book called Lost and Founder, which was really around a difficult journey of an entrepreneur and how they were able to overcome that journey. Those are the ones that come to mind. And the last one, called Ikigai, really just about how do you find a connection between what the world needs, the problem you're solving, doing what you love and getting paid for it. That balance. Those off the top of my head are the ones that really help me.
I love it. Couple of questions before we get into a quick fire round. A couple of final questions.
Yeah.
My first one is, to anybody who's, working, potentially not working, but they're looking to start their own business. They've listened to, this interview with the founder. What would your lasting piece of advice be for anybody who's looking to, start their own thing?
Oh, yeah. I think the last thing would be that I believe that building a business is a muscle, meaning, like, when you go, I think it was a friend of mine that said, when you go to the gym the first time, there's all this equipment. You don't know what it is. You don't know what you're doing. If you want to do legs, if you want to do arms, etc. But as you go through the journey, you'll strain some muscles. You might not be able to go to the gym the next day. You might forget leg day sometimes. But ultimately, if you carry on and you're consistent and you have a self-awareness and know yourself, like, you can actually build a business that at least these days replaces your income, like your work income. So my advice would be, if you think you're going to regret not doing it, try, and recognize that you can build resilience through trying, and there can be nothing more rewarding than going through that journey.
Build the muscle. I love it. And do you know what? It can be applied to so many areas of life. Like the gym analogy, I actually love it so much. Like another one I hear is, I never used to run before lockdown, and people are like, if you want to like run a marathon or whatever, nobody runs a marathon on their first session. Yeah. Just like people who bench like 100 kg as an example, you don't bench 100 kg on your first session.
Yeah.
I had a previous guest, he's a musician. He said, sometimes when you produce music, it's like the gym. Like, not every song is meant to be released. Some are just your workout. One song is your chest. Yeah. One song is your legs. It's like building muscles. It's a phrase that I'm hearing more and more, and I think is a concept that people need to understand. Like, yes, just start, work on something, and continually improve. Because when you look back at it, you'll see how far like you've progressed 100%, and come. Yeah. You've kind of touched upon it, but where does Nana see himself in the next 5 and 10 years?
Yeah, so hopefully sold at least one of the businesses that we either have or are working on, and utilize that money to kind of buy that first business. But also, I'd definitely like to be working from another location as well. I spent obviously a lot of time in London, but thinking about Portugal, thinking about Canada, recognizing that the nature of the type of businesses that I want and have doesn't necessarily require me to be in a specific place. So if I can simultaneously enjoy different cultures and different experiences while doing that, that's the goal, basically.
Chop money, chop life.
In summary,
in summary. And no, this has been sick. Are you ready for the quick fire round?
I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. This has got so much more context now. Unlimited funding with no control, or full control with limited funding.
Full control with limited funding.
Money or happiness?
Happiness.
Constant travel for work or stay in one location?
Constant travel for work. Caveat constant.
Networking or product development?
Product development.
Create a lasting legacy or early payout and move on?
Early payout and move on.
Love it. Would you rather travel to the past or future?
Future.
Who has it easier, men or women?
Men.
And finally, dream dinner guest.
Arsene Wenger.
Oh no, he's a gooner.
I need to find that out last.
Oh yeah, let's shut off that. No, Nana, we do have a closing tradition on this podcast. Knowing everything you know now, I'm laughing because it's a lot. You've come a long way, bro. And we say this every time. Like, what advice would you give your younger self, and would you still be doing the same thing?
Yeah, the advice that I'd give my younger self would be, it's okay to not have it all worked out, to not exactly know where you're going, but having a view and trying is the most important thing. And also identifying people who can be part of your support network. That would be definitely the advice that I'd give my younger self.
And would you still be doing the same thing?
100%. With all the late nights, the tiredness, but also the amazing people you meet on the journey, I literally wouldn't give up.
Love it. Nana, before we let you go, where can people find you, bro?
You can find me on LinkedIn under Nana Parry, or you can email me directly on nana@tectoniclondon.com.
Okay, perfect, Nana. This has been such a sick conversation, bro.
Awesome, great.
Thank you so much for joining. And guys, you know what to do if you've gotten to this point in the show. Make sure to like, subscribe, share. It does wonders for the podcast. This has been another episode of What My Best Friend Does. If you didn't know, now you know. Over and out.